These are the 1.4 B notes for Algebra 2. Today we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. So for parallel lines, you know the parallel lines look like this, right? And they never cross. Almost like a set of railroad tracks. So one other thing we know about parallel lines is in order for them to never cross, they have the same slope. That just means if one of the slopes is 1/2, up 1 over 2, the other one would also have to be up 1 over 2. So for example, y equals 1/2 x plus 7, and y equals 1/2 x minus 3. So the y-intercept parts don't matter, just the slopes. As long as they are the same slope, then the lines are parallel. For perpendicular lines are ones that cross at exactly 90 degrees. Cross at a 90-degree angle. In order for that to happen, the slopes have to be opposite, reciprocal. So what we mean by opposite reciprocal, opposite, we mean opposite sign. So like a positive versus a negative. Reciprocal is just when I take the flat fraction and I flip it. So flip the fraction. So opposite sign, plus versus minus, and flip the fraction. For example, if you had y equals 7 over 2x plus 8, the perpendicular slope would have to be then the opposite sign of the 7 over 2. It was a positive, so I make it a negative. Then I flip the fraction. And then this number here can be anything. So we'll just call that a 3. The y-intercepts don't matter. It's really this slope, and I'm comparing it to this slope right here. Same as with my parallel, I was comparing my 1/2 to my 1/2. So parallel slopes are the same. Perpendicular is when I have the opposite reciprocal. Now there are a lot of lines that are neither parallel nor perpendicular. So if two lines cross and they're not quite making a 90-degree angle, something like this, right? That would be neither parallel or perpendicular. So that would not fall into either category. We call that neither. Let's practice a couple of these. Now, if you're writing in your notebook, I would just write the word parallel or even just PAR. And of course, the number. Perpendicular, I always just shorten it to perp. And of course, the number. Take a second to write those down if you need. For your parallel slope, remember we're going to keep the slope exactly the same. So if our first slope is -7, the other slope is exactly the same thing, -7. So you're literally not doing anything. You're keeping it exactly the same. For the parallel slope of 2/3, yep, just leave it exactly like 2/3. Exactly the same as what you started with. For the perpendicular, however, we're going to need to do two things. We're going to need to change the sign from a positive to negative or negative to positive, and we're going to have to flip the fraction. So this 5/8 is going to become -8/5. For the negative 12, we are going to change it to a positive, but I see this and I don't see a fraction. So what I'm going to need to do first is turn this into a fraction over 1, and then I can flip it. Positive 1/12. Okay. So now we're actually going to be working with fractions, with some fractions with our parallel and perpendicular. And we're going to kind of link it back to what we were working on earlier this week. So parallel and perpendicular. Again, if you're writing this in your notebook, write the word equation down. Write PAR for parallel. We're definitely going to need the equation. And we're going to need this point. So those are 4 great things to write down. So the first thing I need to do is deal with this parallel situation. So I need to find my slope. It looks like my slope is right there. So my slope is 3, which means that my parallel slope would also be 3. The parallel slope would also be 3. So we're going to be using 3 as our m. And then we're going to be using our point negative 11.7. So the first thing you do is identify which slope you're using. If it said perpendicular, then we would need to make some adjustments. Because it says parallel, we're going to keep it exactly the same. So then I'm going to use my m, and this is my x1, y1. And I'm going to plug it into point slope form. If you remember point slope form, if you want to look back at your notes, it looks like that. This y, remember, stays the letter y, and this x stays an x, and we're going to plug numbers in for the other 3 places. If you remember how to do that, take a second and try it. Your setup should look like this. Notice your double negative on your 11. I'll make that a plus. Then I distribute. Then I get the y completely by itself by adding 7. Final answer, y equals 3x plus 40. If you notice, this 3 right here exactly matches the 3 that we started off with, which should always happen for parallel. All right, let's try the next problem. This one now says perpendicular. Write down the word equation. Write down what the equation actually is, and write down the point 2, 4. We're going to first start by dealing with our slope. So our slope right now is 1/5. If we want to change that into perpendicular, we have to do the opposite reciprocal. Opposite would be 5/1 with a negative. So opposite reciprocal, opposite change the sign, reciprocal flip it over. I would rather just write that as -5. It'll be easier for me to work with in the equation. Now this is going to be my m. This is going to be my x1 and my y1. And I can plug it in to the point slope form. There's the setup. I'll give you a moment to distribute and solve for y. You should have y minus 4 equals negative 5x plus 10. And then add 4 to both sides, resulting in a final answer of y equals negative 5x plus 14. You can compare your answer to what you started with. So your negative 5 on your slope should be the opposite reciprocal of your 1/5. Okay, for our next problem, same type of thing. Write your equation, write your point, write the word parallel, so for this one, because it says parallel, I'm going to take my negative 6 slope. I want to keep it parallel, so I'm going to use the exact same slope, negative 6. This becomes my m, my x1, my y1. Plug it into the equation. And solve. Take a moment here, try to plug it into the right places, and eventually solve it out for y. Double negative, distribute, add 1, and there's our final answer. Okay, let's do one more perpendicular. Write down the word equation, perp, write down the point, write down the equation. And remember, you could always pause these videos, so whenever I'm going too fast or you need a chance to write the problem down or try the problem, just pause the video and start it back up when you're ready. First thing we're going to do, take our slope, which is 2. Talking about that 2 right there. We're going to change it over into perpendicular, opposite, reciprocal. Hint, think about it as 2 over 1. You should be getting negative 1/2. Then we are going to take the negative 1/2 as our m. This is going to be our x1 and our y1. And we're going to plug it in. Y minus negative 2 equals negative 1/2 times x minus negative 8. Take your double negatives, make them positives. Distribute the negative 1/2. You can use your calculator if you need. And solve this all the way till the end. I'll give you just a moment. All right, it should look something like this. Y plus 2 equals negative 1/2 x minus 4. Subtract the 2. Final answer of negative 1/2 x minus 6. If you have any questions, reach out. I'm here to help.